very much, Yannick and colleagues. Thank you for having me here today. Very happy to participate in this conversation, which is very timely and important. And yes, I would like to start from my very recent experience in this task force of the Italian government for somehow how data and models can help in facing the epidemics, especially towards the next phase. And actually, we are also working very much side to side with the epidemiologists and with people from the health system that it needs to take decision on how to exit the lockdown now, no? And to somehow go towards a very distributed and efficient epidemic surveillance that is very much focusing on two main things. The first one, as soon as we go into a situation where the big spikes are gone, there is the need of somehow controlling that new, let's say, resurgence of the epidemics at a large scale are contained. This means essentially two things. One is being able to test many people effectively, find as early as possible the positive to the virus, because we need to live for a phase where we will not be having vaccines, we will not be having effective drugs, and therefore the only weapon that we really have is in spotting the positive people as soon as possible, to contain, isolate them according to the epidemic surveillance processes, and ask them what are their contacts, recent contacts, to follow the transmission chains, follow new people that could have been infected, and do the same with them. So this is the first activity. This is what contact tracing is in practice. It's first of all a very hard work of an army of firemen, I would say, of people that is trying to spot the new little fires and contain them immediately. And the second part is to do the same thing at the level of communities. Because if many new cases somehow are clustered geographically in a neighborhood, in a hospital, in a shopping mall, it is necessary to do some other community level kind of interventions that somehow avoid that the fire begin again to be a big fire. And so the question is actually, before somehow talking about apps and digital technologies, the real basic question is, how can citizens help the firemen do their job, and preserve a common good, which is public health? How can we participate in this game actively rather than simply being tested and, if found positive, somehow follow the procedures? I mean, the lockdown has been already an example of this, right? We have somehow actively participated under a compression that has been first kind of voluntary, and then second is actually been compelled by laws and decrees. But essentially we have compressed some of our liberty of movement, liberty of whatever to help for this. Now we're talking about whether it's possible to find collective participation for solving the issue. And of course, I mean, when liberties are compressed, you need also somehow a rationale for that, and also deadlines, to be clear that it's somehow only a temporary compression of some trade-offs between goals that are all legitimate in a constitutional democratic society. Now, of course, there are two approaches, right, that you can follow for somehow it's somehow enforcing people participation by digital surveillance, which I believe is not somehow compatible with democracy. Democracy means to foster the citizen active participation, and this is what we're discussing really about. Then we can start about what technology can help in doing. The protocols that Michael Veale was discussing before me, it's one possible tool to help somehow improve the work of the firemen, to do a little bit more in tracing more contacts, maybe it's a way of expanding the memory of a person that is being tested positive, ask for what were your contacts in the last few days. I mean, you also have another mean for not forgetting some that you didn't really somehow care about, or somebody you didn't know, but you don't remember, but you actually could be at danger now. So essentially, the point is what was discussed in the previous idea. For contact tracing, you can essentially put in place a very privacy-preserving way of storing at the personal device level your proximity contacts, your strong collocation using Bluetooth sensing technology in a way that is totally anonymous and can be arranged without any central repository, totally decentralized, and can be effective, although different from what happens in the real epidemic process, the epidemiologist, let's say, containment process, because in reality, a positive person would have been asked about who are the people you contacted, right? Name and surname, and somehow identified and contacted. In this game, instead, the people participating in the game would receive automatically from the system a warning that they could then use for instance, disclosing the fact that they were close to a positive person, and therefore they might voluntarily contact the health authorities for being tested and enter the procedure. So in a sense, what we are talking about is that a totally decentralized approach where personal information is stored on a personal data store, not shared with anybody, exclusive usage of, let's say, of the individual person, and it's only voluntarily disclosed when one becomes positive, which means also a possible threat to common health, to public health. Okay, and I would also mention that dealing with epidemiologists is not really true that they don't care about location. They do, because also being able to geolocalize appropriately the new positive, it's a very important science to spot spatial clustering that might somehow suggest there's a new outbreak coming out, which requires a different kind of treatment, different from contact tracing. And again, this is not something that it's by itself so problematic, in a sense that, first of all, these need to be totally maintained decentralized and decoupled from contact tracing. You don't need to be constantly checked for your trajectory. What is actually interesting is that when you're tested positive, you are able to tell the people where was the places where you spent most of your time in the last few days. This is what is really important, with a very somehow loose spatial resolution that can again be totally. I mean, there are more than 10 years of work on how to disclose location information in a privacy-preserving way, and of course, I totally agree with Michael Veale before. Everything, of course, depends now on what kind of usage we want to do of this information at national level or with the specific apps. But the point here is that we are totally somehow capable of registering salient data at personal devices in personal data stores that are of exclusive control by the citizen, and only being disclosed on a voluntary basis and in a totally privacy-preserving way, both for contact tracing and separately for location, only when and if the person is tested positive and want to somehow participate actively in the game. I think this is very much important to do. There are, of course, different models. I totally agree with the DP3 model that has been presented by Michael Veale before for the contact tracing part. But we really need to focus on an important message. We are not trying to solve a problem with digital technologies. We are trying to solve the problem with a huge investment in people and people participation and expert work of the epidemiologists and the firemen on the place, that can be helped to be even more effective with some digital tool. But we are not going to win this battle only thanks to an app. This must absolutely be somehow very well focused. I'm a computer scientist and I can testify for that. There's no magic in there. Certainly there are important aspects. One important aspect is that, like often happens in complex systems, and models explain that very much, it's not needed that everybody participate in this game. If there is a critical mass of citizens participating actively in this game, we can very effectively reduce help the epidemic forces to reduce the epidemics in a very effective way, and in a fashion that is very typical of many social complex systems. No? Like in traffic, we don't need all to be somehow respectful in traffic, but when you reach a critical threshold, things can immediately begin to get better very, very quickly. And this is also for epidemics. If we can somehow propose trustful, not only technology, but trustful games where people can play for being helpful to the common good, I think we can engage not everybody, but let's say 30, 40, maybe 50% of people, and with that, because the game would only somehow, what we're talking about would only somehow affect the participating citizens, could become, together with the firemen, very effective in containing the epidemics in the next phase, and allow us a safe return to slow but effective return to most of our activities and our liberties, even in a situation where we need to wait for time until drugs and vaccines work for us. Very final few seconds to tell that we have been also publishing a manifesto for this approach of personal data store, which I think it's very important to stress. I would like to somehow you to consider and help spreading this fact. It's already some time, at least 7, 8 years, that people around the world, like me and also Michael Veale, I think many people around is pushing for this idea of empowering people with self-management of data in personal data stores that are under exclusive control of people. It cannot be somehow opened by anybody, even by police or whoever. These are very much under the exclusive control of people that can somehow ingest the data concerning basically all activities that a person want to record about himself or herself. And this is a very basic tool for personal awareness that could be very effectively put in place on a voluntary basis and with very strong privacy guarantees, could be put in place for, let's say, objectives that are related to the common good. For instance, for better managing traffic and mobility. But in this case, if we would have this kind of tool in place already, and this could have been done securely and privately and in a effective way already, independently of the crisis, this would have been an extremely valuable tool now for facing a crisis, for facing, in this case, a very big epidemic. Because what we really need, we really favor a bit longer term pursuit of realizing this idea, where somehow given the user an easy and trustful way to contribute to collective good in the measure everyone wants, enhancing self-awareness and also somehow cultivating the collective efforts for rebuilding society. It's a real challenge we are facing now. So thank you very much. This is the basic message.